I've covered the costs for college, you know. Acting all high and mighty over that? High and mighty? You know that $45,000 is a considerable amount of money, don't you? Just be quiet. Anyway, don't act like you're doing me a favor. Don't come to my daughter's wedding either. And then the eldest son's wife verbally abused me, treating me with contempt no matter what. I had reached my limit with her attitude. With a beaming smile, I said to her, "If you're going to go that far, I'll gladly stay away." My name is Emily, a 69-year-old housewife. My husband passed away 4 years ago, and now I live alone in a large house. The four of us, my husband, my 2 sons, and I, used to live in this house. Currently, my eldest son, Tom, is 47 years old, and my younger son, Richard, is 43 years old. Both have their own families. This house used to be very lively and noisy. My sons were mischievous and would always run around the yard playing catch, and they would sometimes fight over competitive video games. My husband and I would have to scold them and temporarily confiscate the games on such occasions. As the children grew older, they stopped fighting and began to seriously consider their future paths, such as high school and college. They were both good children who studied properly, even asking to attend cram school on their own. Therefore, both of them advanced to prestigious schools and went on to attend high-level universities. Sending both of our children to college was financially challenging, but my husband worked hard and held a decent position, so we were able to raise our 2 sons without worrying about money. After our sons became independent, my husband and I enjoyed our time together, spending our days leisurely. We traveled abroad, went on local hot spring trips, and made lots of enjoyable memories. A few years passed, and my eldest son got married, followed soon after by my younger son. I realized then how suddenly things in life can change. As we talked about possibly seeing our grandchildren soon, my husband and I celebrated our sons' marriages. Then, soon after their marriage, my eldest son and his wife had a child. Born to them was a beautiful girl named Allie. Meeting our first grandchild was truly moving. My husband and I, growing tearful in our old age, were so happy that we cried as we held our grandchild. "Come on, Mom and Dad, you're getting too emotional." Even with my eldest son's teasing, the tears wouldn't stop. From then on, my husband and I celebrated our grandchild's special occasions as much as we could. We contributed money for various ceremonies, such as the celebration of the Children's Growth Festival, entrance ceremonies, and graduation. Seeing our grandchild happy was a joy, and knowing our eldest son was pleased also made us happy. Our eldest son would send us pictures of Ellie at various milestones, and this became something we looked forward to. A few years later, a lovely baby boy was born to our younger son and his wife. We were happy that both our sons had children. Of course, without any discrimination, we celebrated and adored our younger son's child just as we did with our eldest son's child, especially during special occasions. The whole family gathered for joyous times during New Year's or the special summer holidays, and we had fun barbecuing in the yard where Tom and his brother used to run around. Seeing our sons show their own children their parents' faces made us deeply reflective about how much time had passed. Time flew by quickly, and the grandchildren grew rapidly. Ellie, the daughter of our eldest son's family, started to stay with us for extended periods during the summer break from around 5th grade. Tom and his wife wanted some time alone as a couple. This was essential, And it was good for both us and the grandchildren as we could spend time together. Ellie was such a good girl. She shared many stories about school with my husband and me and helped me with cooking. She was a very responsible child. Even when we dined out together, she would always thank the server herself, and we felt that Tom and his wife had raised her well. There was actually something I was a little worried about. It was about Tom's wife, Catherine. Catherine is generally a good person, but she has a somewhat difficult or irritable personality. I didn't know where her triggers were, and she would sometimes snap at unexpected comments. When was that, I wonder? I once casually asked Catherine, "Are you not working and staying as a full-time housewife?" For me, it was just simple conversation, just a question without any deep meaning. But at that time, Catherine stared at me sharply. "Is it wrong to be a full-time housewife? Huh? Do you think women have to work too? You were a full-time housewife too, weren't you? Isn't it strange to tell me to work and only me?" Even though I hadn't said anything, she quickly said such things, and I was taken aback. I'm not saying anything like that. Calm down, Catherine. At least Tom's wife stopped being angry with me then, but from that time on, I had been a little uncomfortable with her. I didn't know when she might lose her temper, and she seemed difficult to approach. Even when I was interacting with my granddaughter, she would look at me with watchful eyes, making me wonder if I had done something wrong. That's why I was a little worried about whether Ellie, who was raised by Tom's wife, would have no personality issues. However, such worries were unfounded, and Ellie grew up to be a very good girl. Even after becoming a middle school student and then a high school student, Ellie was incredibly kind and honest, and she treated my husband and me very well. But in the midst of all this, something very unfortunate happened to me. It was the death of my beloved husband. My husband developed cancer, and a year later, he took his last breath. I was truly saddened by the loss of my husband, with whom I had been together for many years. It took time to recover, but I gradually regained my energy. Then, an unfortunate incident happened to Tom and his family. What? The company went bankrupt? Yes, that's right. So now I'm unemployed. Shockingly, Tom's company went bankrupt suddenly due to the economic downturn. So Tom and his wife came to me with a request. "Mom, the truth is, we're falling behind on Ellie's college tuition payments. I'm really sorry to ask this, but could you help us with the admission fee and this year's tuition? Please, Emily, help us. Please help us. It's painful to think that our daughter, who got into the college she wanted to attend, might not be able to go." Even Tom's wife, who had always been so difficult, bowed her head and pleaded with me. "Of course I will. I'll help Ellie as much as needed." I said that and immediately handed over the college entrance fee and first-year tuition to Tom. "Mom, thank you so much. I'll never forget this kindness." "It's fine, just let me know whenever you're in trouble." After that, it seems that Ellie was able to enter college safely. "Ellie, are you enjoying college?" "Yes, it's really fun. I've made some friends and the classes are really interesting." "Is that so? Well, I'm glad to hear that." Seeing my granddaughter happy made me feel glad that I helped. I also received word from Tom that he had successfully found a new job. "Mom, I'll definitely pay back the money you gave me." No, it's fine. That was money I gave you. Rather, focus on saving money to make up for the difficult time you had while you were unemployed." "Thank you, Mom." Everything seemed to have settled nicely. That's what I thought, but almost a year later, my daughter-in-law unexpectedly came to my house alone. What's going on? It's unusual for you to come alone, Catherine. I have a favor to ask of you, Emily. What is it? Actually, I want to ask for your help with Ellie's college expenses again this year. What? Tom has found a new job and is working properly, right? Can't he pay for the tuition now? Well, since he changed jobs, his salary has decreased quite a bit. Really? He didn't mention that. I think he probably didn't want to worry you. I see. It was indeed something that could happen with my eldest son. My eldest son has a strong sense of responsibility and has a habit of taking everything on himself. I think he must have reached his limit with Ellie's college entrance fee and first-year tuition, so he asked for my help. He probably believes that he can't rely on me any further now that he's re-employed. I came here today without telling Tom again. Tom says he'll manage on his own, but considering our funds for our old age, the reality is that it's tough. So I thought maybe I could ask for your assistance again, mother-in-law. The eldest daughter-in-law said so and bowed her head. I was a little hesitant, but I decided to help again this year. That's fine. There's still some of your father's inheritance left. And above all, it's for Ellie's sake. I thought I would be willing to give as much as necessary for my dear granddaughter. Thank you, Emily. Can you keep this a secret from Tom? I think he would feel responsible and worry about it. I see. Okay. Thank you very much. Since then, my eldest son's family has come to my house, their parental home, several times, and it seems that both Tom and Ellie are enjoying themselves without any problems. However, a year later, my daughter-in-law came to me again to ask for help with tuition. Has Tom's income not increased yet? Yes, that's right. The rent for our apartment is fairly high and life is tough. I know it's shameful, but can I ask for your assistance again? I started to feel something was wrong around this time. I ended up providing financial assistance for the tuition without thinking to doubt my daughter-in-law. I just handed over the money thoughtlessly, thinking that as long as my eldest son Tom and my granddaughter Ellie were happy and living peacefully, it was fine. Perhaps living alone in my family home and feeling lonely had something to do with it. Helping others seemed to be one way to fill the emptiness in my heart. But the next year, my daughter-in-law came to me again, demanding tuition for Ellie. This time, I was really at a loss. Are you really struggling that much with money? You, living on a pension, may not understand the impact of this recession. Is that so? We're really at our wits' end. Even Ellie's facing difficulties finding employment, and if she doesn't graduate from college, who knows what will happen in the future. With that, my daughter-in-law started crying. Wait a minute, Catherine, calm down. I understand, I'll help you, so please don't worry. Thank you, Emily. Thus, I ended up paying all of Ellie's college tuition. The total amount reached approximately $45,000. Honestly, it's quite a blow, but I convinced myself that it's okay if it is for my granddaughter's future. Grandma, I've successfully graduated from college and found a job. Congratulations, Ellie. It's all because you worked so hard, Ellie. Thank you, but it's all thanks to you, Grandma. Huh? You paid for my college entrance fee and tuition for the first year, didn't you? I heard from my dad that when his company went bankrupt and things were tough, you helped us out. Thank you so much. No, it's fine. I thought that just being thanked like that by Ellie was enough. After that, Ellie became a working adult and started working hard. She occasionally contacts me or comes to see me on her own, and she seems to be enjoying her work and living fulfilling days. Since my husband passed away and I live alone, it's really nice that she takes the time to come and see me, and I think Ellie is truly a good girl. My second son's family has been living far away for about 15 years due to a job transfer and can't come here easily. So I'm truly grateful that Ellie comes to see me. About 2 years after Ellie started working, she came to my house one day. Ellie, you seem to have a happy look on your face. You can tell? I guess my joy is showing on my face. Something good happened? Actually, I'm getting married. What? Married? Surprised by this, I said, and Ellie nodded with a flushed face. Congratulations, Ellie! Grandma is really happy too. Thank you, Grandma. You have to come to the wedding. Yes, of course I'll go. I'm looking forward to it. I was very happy. My tiny, cute granddaughter was getting married already. Time really does fly. I eagerly awaited my granddaughter's wedding day, spending each day in anticipation. I received a wedding invitation, marked my attendance with a circle, and sent it back. Ellie's big day is almost here. Maybe I should go to the hair salon and get a new dress. I was thinking such things. Then, suddenly, my eldest son's wife came to my house. Catherine, what on earth is going on? My eldest son's wife wore an incredibly unfriendly expression. I thought this couldn't be good. She stomped into the living room and plopped down on the sofa without permission. I wondered what was happening and took a seat across from her. I'll get right to the point. Could you please not come to Ellie's wedding? What? Why? Because I find your presence annoying. Annoying? I was shocked at what she said. Wait, you can't just say something like that out of the blue and expect me to accept not going to the wedding. I don't care whether you agree or disagree, Emily. I've always hated you. And yet, I don't know how, but you've managed to charm Ellie. Thanks to that, it was really unpleasant hearing her talk about you at home. But I even paid for her college tuition. Acting all high and mighty over something like that? You understand how much money $45,000 is, don't you? Besides, isn't Ellie the star of the wedding? I've been invited by Ellie, you know? Enough already. Just don't act so self-righteous. Please don't come to my daughter's wedding. With that, my eldest son's wife cursed at me. Her continuous mistreatment of me was more than I could bear. I spoke with a beaming smile. I understand. If you say so, I'll gladly not attend. When I said that, my eldest son's wife was momentarily surprised but quickly smiled. It's a promise. Please don't come. I understand, don't worry. And my eldest son's wife left with a triumphant peace. I immediately called my eldest son. Can you come over? There's something important I need to talk about. My eldest son came over as soon as I asked. I then explained what had just transpired with my daughter-in-law. What? Catherine said that? Yes, that's what happened. Also, she told me to keep it a secret, but I paid Ellie's college tuition for all 4 years. Well, wait a minute. That must be a mistake, right? I should have been paying for Ellie's tuition from my salary. What? But Catherine came to me every year asking for the money. That's why I gave her the money each year. She said that your salary wasn't increasing much. No, I started at the same salary as my previous job after re-employment, and I've been getting raises every year. What? So I've been able to pay for Ellie's tuition from my salary. I can't believe it. But I did make the transfers to Catherine when she asked. I wondered if I had anything to prove this, so I brought out the bank book I had kept as evidence. Look, here's the evidence that I've transferred money to Catherine's account. It's true. There's also more evidence. I had actually recorded the conversation with my daughter-in-law earlier. I had a bad feeling when she arrived with an unenthusiastic face. I can't believe she deceived my mom and took her money. My eldest son was trembling with anger. I felt the same way. I won't forgive her. Let's call Ellie here. My eldest son said this and called his daughter. Ellie, who had heard that there was an important discussion, came over with some nervousness. However, she was at a loss for words when she heard the story from my son. My mother did such a thing? But wait! Saying that, Ellie seemed to remember something and started talking. I did notice her buying a lot of branded items all of a sudden. I thought it was because Dad's salary increased, but she was actually spending the money she took from Grandma. We swore to take revenge on my deceitful daughter-in-law in our fury. On the day of the wedding, I boycotted the ceremony. Instead, my son showed me the scene of the wedding through a video call. I could see my oblivious daughter-in-law enjoying her drink happily. Then came the time for the bride to read a letter to the family, and Ellie stood in front of the microphone. I have something to tell you all today. My grandmother, who was supposed to be here today, isn't present. My grandmother has always been very kind and treated me with love. That's why I loved her so much. I wanted her to come to the wedding, of course, but she isn't here today because of a particular reason. That reason is my mother. My mother, who is my grandmother's daughter-in-law, disliked her and told her not to attend the wedding. Moreover, I found out that she was appealing to my grandmother's emotions and collecting $45,000 for my college expenses, even though she wasn't actually in financial trouble. The whole began to stir at Ellie's words. I could see my daughter-in-law rushing towards the stage in a panic. What, Ellie? What nonsense are you talking about? Mom, it's not nonsense. I have the evidence right here, and I know what you've been doing with the money you took from Grandma. What? Mom, you were having an affair behind Dad's back, weren't you? What are you saying? It's no use hiding it. I've had it investigated by a private detective and got the evidence. Dad is going to divorce you and get compensation. And you'll also have to pay back the $45,000 you stole from Grandma. That can't be... The daughter-in-law collapsed on the spot, with everyone's attention on her. Knowing that so many people now knew about her affair, she probably felt that she couldn't go on living. Later, Ellie apologized to the people at the venue and confidently returned to her seat after presenting everyone with a glass of high-quality wine. The daughter-in-law ran away from the venue. I watched her escape through the video call, thinking to myself, serves her right. Then the eldest son divorced and claimed compensation from Catherine and her lover for the affair. He also claimed the $45,000 she had taken from me. As a result, Catherine ended up in debt to the tune of $72,000. She's apparently now working multiple part-time jobs, desperately trying to pay off the debt. It serves her right. Meanwhile, I've started living with my eldest son in my house. Ellie and her husband come to visit, and we all go out to eat regularly. From now on, I plan to cherish my family, including my eldest son, Ellie, and the family of my second son, and enjoy the rest of my life. You're worthless. You can't take care of the chores and the kids. Let's divorce. And also pay the alimony. John showed up for the first time at the hospital 2 weeks after I was in a traffic accident. Spoke these outrageous words without even showing concern for me as I lay on the hospital bed. Initially, I had thought better of John, assuming he had finally come to visit me, but he was a disappointing husband after all. I let out a big and long sigh. Honestly, I had been thinking about wanting a divorce myself. I didn't expect John to bring it up today, but I suppose I should be thankful that it saved us of the trouble. Fine. John was surprised to see me agree without any conflict. Unfortunately for you, John, I know what you're up to. I wanted to tell him. I was laughing inside my head. My name is Catherine. I'm a 35-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, John, and our 7-year-old daughter, Emma. John and I met at a blind group date and got married when I was 28. He was easy to talk to, and with him coming on to me, I finally gave in and we started dating. John was handsome, and when we first met, it was clear he was the most attractive one at the table. So when he told me that he liked me, I felt proud. John really devoted himself to our relationship. He prepared surprise dessert plates and bouquets at fancy restaurants for my birthdays, and always took me on trips on our anniversaries. He would even write me letters to express his feelings at just the right moments, and I didn't know what I did to deserve such a man. Of course, I accepted John's marriage proposal without hesitation. Being with John, who loves surprises, I thought the everyday will be exciting even after marriage. Me feeling over the moon, did not expect what was coming next. How he would change into a loser after marriage. Hey, Catherine, my dinner's not ready yet. I worked all day, and you can't even prepare dinner before I return? I can't believe how lazy you are. Once our marriage life began, he started to insist that he was the master of the house and that I was the master's caretaker. At first, I thought he was just joking around. In fact, we used to laugh at each other's silly jokes when we were dating. We were laughing at the sweet newlywed life that everyone imagines at least once, like calling each other by nicknames even after getting married or remaining lovey-dovey even after having children. But he was not joking. He treated me as if I were a servant or something worse. At first, I used to retort, "Stop joking around." But gradually, as I started to realize he's being serious, he really thinks I'm his caretaker, and that gave me the chills. Since getting married, I had to quit my job, and we were living on the money John earned. Therefore, I feared that if I disobeyed him, he might punish me financially, so I couldn't do anything. Frankly speaking, John's income isn't very high. I was earning more when I was working. John is a high school graduate and has been hopping from one job to another. His fickle nature continues to this day, quitting jobs within a year or two. It seemed that John had a complex feeling about his background, and it appeared that he was venting his frustration on me at home. I'm sorry, I got delayed with some errands. Don't make excuses, just hurry up and make it. John said and immediately sat on the couch with a cold beer in his hand. It was a scene I had grown accustomed to, but I sighed and began to cook. My marriage life made me miserable, but I got by, not caring. The following year, after getting married, Emma was born, and my everyday was a continuous of daily struggle. As I expected, John was a man who hardly took care of our child. Even so, he would buy candy or toy that Emma wanted and spoiled her excessively. I wanted to raise Emma into a decent person, so I would naturally scold her when she did something wrong, which made her more attached to John. "Emma, you like Daddy, don't you?" "Yeah, Daddy's cool. I love Daddy." I knew it. I'm super dad. Upon hearing Emma's reply, John looked at me with a smug expression. Although it was frustrating, the fact that a child loves her father is a good thing, so I just sighed. Despite spoiling Emma this way, he never showed up at the kindergarten sports festival or recitals. You know, there's a parent-child race at Emma's sports festival. Could you participate? Huh? Why me? You're free that day, you do it. I'm busy with work every day. But isn't it a chance to deepen our bond as parents? The sports festival is on a Sunday, so you won't have to work. Shut up. We're already bonded. Rather, you might want to deepen your bond with Emma. She thinks you're a wicked bitch, you know? Maybe you should work on that. LOL. John went to work, laughing at me. A super dad that does not show up to school events. I was worried that John's character of being indulgent with himself and strict to others might rub off on Emma. John continued to leave all household chores and child rearing to me and was lazy at home. Now Emma is 6 years old and has reached the age to go to elementary school, but John was still switching from job to job. He recently quit the factory where he had been working until last month and changed jobs to a company in the food and beverage industry. I'll be working on weekends at my next job since it's in the food industry. Really? It seems like we'll be like ships passing in the night then. It can't be helped, it's work. Yes, I know, but I was actually relieved. Because I was fed up with being ordered to do housework by John on weekends. I don't have to be ordered to do the chores, I'll do it myself. I hated being nagged, "This floor is dirty," or "Serve the meal quickly." But if John was going to be out on a holiday, Emma would be sad. For a child, it's better to spend holidays with the whole family. Anyway, I have work, so please let Emma know. I understand. I couldn't complain to John, who was earning a living for our family. I reluctantly went to tell Emma about John's work. "I'm sorry. You won't be able to go out with Daddy on his day off." I thought Emma would be sad, and I told her so with a scowled expression. However, contrary to my expectations, Emma looked unconcerned. It's okay." "It is? If you're okay with it, he's not going to be here on all weekends. You know that, right?" "Yeah, Daddy has been smelling strange lately." "A strange smell?" Emma nodded and went back to her room. What on earth is she talking about? Recently, I have been overwhelmed by housework and child rearing, and I had no time to notice anything about him. Our marital life wasn't the same as before, and I was making an effort not to be around John so as not to provoke him. Well, it might be the smell from the factory. That explanation made the most sense to me. Factories might use special solvents, so it would be natural for John to have a strange smell. If that's the case, the strange smell will be gone soon. Children are really honest. That's what makes them adorable. In the end, as John had said, he started leaving early in the morning on his day off. What's strange is that he also leaves the house every day on weekdays. If he's working on weekends, he should have a day off during the week. When he leaves in the morning, he goes without saying anything to me, so I can't tell if he's going to work or not. I wonder what he could be doing all alone, leaving so early even on his days off. I became curious and asked John, "You seem to be going out every day off. What are you doing?" John blinked in confusion for a moment, then answered, scratching his head in an annoyed manner. "I'm working. I'm new, so I'm going to work voluntarily." "Really? But you should take care of yourself, or your body won't hold up." "Shut up! Don't complain about my job." I don't understand why John gets so angry about this when he complains about my housework and child rearing. I didn't believe what John said. There's no way John, who usually avoids trouble, would voluntarily go to work on his days off. I knew this because I had been watching him closely for many years. If he was that passionate about work, he would have stayed at his previous company longer. I also paid attention to and investigated the strange smell that Emma had mentioned. Indeed, John came home from work with a sweet, striking fragrance. The strange smell was not from the factory. Why didn't I notice this before? I lamented my own naivety and vowed never to make such a mistake again. From that point on, I decided to carefully observe John. On weekdays, when he said he was going to work, he seemed to wake up an hour earlier than usual and carefully groom himself. He seemed to be in a good mood on those days. The day varied from week to week, sometimes being Wednesday, sometimes Thursday, but it was clear that John is happy on that day. When John left the house, I went into his room to see if there was anything that could serve as a clue. I felt like a police officer conducting a search of a house. Since I always cleaned John's room, I was familiar with it, and I didn't feel guilty. If John had left any clues, he would likely have left them somewhere you could not spot easily. I searched carefully under the desk and bed. Finally, in a candy tin in the closet, I found a large number of letters. What is this? All the letters were from the same person, named Mia. They were properly sent through the mail. Looking at the postmark dates, the oldest was from 2 months ago and the most recent was sent yesterday. As I read the letter, I found phrases like, "I regret it when we broke up, but now I really love you," or "I want to go back to the time when I was with you," or "I love you," just like a teenage girl in the throes of youth would say. At first, I thought it was John's ex-girlfriend sending letters unilaterally, but I found a concerning sentence in one of the letters. "I'm glad you like me again. I'm looking forward to our next date." A truly joyful sentence jumped out at me. The date on it was from last week. It seems John is meeting this Mia girl today. He's definitely guilty. With that conviction, I took evidence photos of the content of the letters on my smartphone. I considered confiscating the letters, but moving carelessly might arouse John's suspicion. Even though I had obtained physical evidence, it felt insufficient as proof. After thinking for a while, I hired a private investigator to look into John's personal life. 3 weeks later, the investigator reported the results. I was surprised to receive the results so quickly. What the investigator brought were pictures of John walking arm in arm with Mia and exchanging passionate embraces in the park at night. There was even a recording of them saying "I love you" to each other. I calmly accepted the facts on these evidences. With solid evidence in hand, I went straight to the municipal office and came back with a divorce form. Now that I knew John was cheating, there was no reason to cling to him anymore. I swore to thrust the divorce papers in John's face. the next time something definitive happened. I returned home and heaved a deep sigh. I was acting as I was fine all this time, but honestly, I was devastated. I was angry at myself for having married a careless person like John. I thought about resting a bit before preparing dinner when my cell phone rang. Hello, yes? Catherine, do you have time to talk? Yes, what's going on? I was genuinely surprised by the sudden call from my father. He usually doesn't call me. Actually, your mother and I talked yesterday, and we're thinking about transferring our assets to you soon. Huh? What happened? My father ran a company that sold imported goods from overseas to Japanese corporations. In short, I was the daughter of the president of a big company. But I had never told John about this. I thought it would sound like I was bragging, especially since John was flitting from one company to another. What could my father mean by transferring assets to me? We're getting old. We're thinking about retiring. We considered keeping the company going, but we didn't want to push it on to you, our only daughter. So we've decided to step away now. I see. Honestly, I felt guilty about not taking over the company, but my parents respected my decision not to take over and had considered what to do in the future. I was overwhelmed by their kind consideration. So we're thinking of handing over our assets to you. Our total wealth is $14 million, but we're fine with just $1 million. We've decided to give you the remaining $13 million. What? $13 million? Even I was surprised by this figure. Such a huge amount of money, $13 million, is something I could never earn in my entire life. Yes, there will probably be inheritance tax, but there should still be quite a bit left. You won't have to worry about living expenses for the rest of your life. Dad, thank you. I expressed my utmost gratitude to my father and mother and hung up the phone. $14 million would be coming my way soon. With that money, I wouldn't have any worries, even if I divorced John. No offense to John, but he probably doesn't have the ability to earn that much money. I felt saved and was in a daze for a while. I looked at the clock. It was 5 p.m. I realized I needed to prepare dinner and looked into the refrigerator, but there were no groceries left for dinner. I got ready to go shopping at the supermarket. After hearing about the assets from my father, my heart felt light. But there was also a sense of urgency that John might come home soon, so I was walking quickly. As the last crosswalk to the supermarket turned green, and I hurried across. Watch out! Someone yelled out, but my body was already soaring through the air. My body slammed into the ground, and a strong impact pierced my head. Without understanding what had happened, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was lying on the hospital bed. The first thing that caught my eye when I opened my eyes were my parents and Emma. Catherine, thank goodness. Mom! Emma was sobbing next to me. I gently stroked her head. You were hit by a car and fractured both legs. They say it will take 3 months for a full recovery. 3 months? I felt dizzy at the thought of that long period of time. From that day on, I was confined to a wheelchair. Although the nurses took care of me, I felt frustration and irritation at not being able to use my legs. During my hospital stay, my parents and friends came to visit me. Apparently, my parents are now taking care of Emma. Since John is always at work, I thought that would be better for Emma. I was happy that everyone came to visit me, but John never showed. I doubted his sensitivity, thinking, aren't we husband and wife after all? I couldn't help but imagine that he must be enjoying his daily life with his ex-girlfriend. However, 2 weeks after the start of my hospitalization, John finally showed up. "Hey, feeling good?" John, who must have known that I wasn't well, asked ironically. I replied lightly, "Yes." "Man, I was shocked. It's a mess here without you at home." John, who complains about my not doing housework at home, as soon as he opens his mouth, seems to lack human empathy. I sighed. I thought that even John would be at least a little worried about me. "What can I do? I was in a car accident." When I retorted, John looked at me with contempt and said, "What are you talking about? You're useless if you can't do housework or childcare. Let's divorce. And you'd better pay alimony." He blurted out such outrageous things to his hospitalized wife. Although I first reassessed John, thinking he finally came to visit me, he was still a disappointing husband. I sighed heavily again. Honestly, I had been thinking of wanting a divorce myself. I hadn't expected John to bring up divorce today, but I might as well be thankful that it saved me the trouble of arguing. Sure. John's eyes widened in surprise when I nodded. "Unfortunately, I know your true intentions." I wanted to say that, and I couldn't stop laughing inside. "Here's the divorce notice." I took out a filled-in divorce notice from a bag that my mother had brought me and thrust it in front of John's nose. "You already had this? I'll submit this when I can." John was momentarily confused, his eyes wide open, but he snatched the divorce notice from me and filled in his name and address on the spot. "I feel refreshed knowing I won't have to see your face ever again. See ya." I wanted to say that the feeling was mutual, but I silently watched John leave. Probably John will remarry Mia after filing that divorce notice. I don't know what kind of woman Mia is, but it feels somewhat pitiful to think that she's going to marry that domineering and unpleasant John. I feel like I've done something terrible to Emma, but it was a decision I made long ago. I swore in my heart that I would raise Emma. For a month after he showed up, my life was at peace. The time without being nagged by my husband was like heaven to me. I was discharged from the hospital and started physical rehab. I decided to be taken care of at my parents' house until my leg recovered. My parents were furious at John when they heard about the divorce, but they stopped bothering me about it when I told them I wanted to forget about John. Emma, despite not having a father, doesn't seem lonely and is attending elementary school cheerfully. In the end, Emma saw through him too. Emma noticed John's domineering attitude as well, and perhaps she no longer thinks of her father, who would go out somewhere even on his days off, as a father. Anyway, divorcing John was the right decision. That's what I was convinced of. But one weekday afternoon, I received a call on my mobile phone. I ignored the call when I saw John's name on the screen. However, the phone kept ringing incessantly. Thinking that it wouldn't stop ringing if I kept ignoring it, I finally answered the call. "Hey, Catherine, when are you coming back?" Hearing John's first words, I involuntarily asked back, "Uh-huh?" I wish he wouldn't say something so incomprehensible with such a force that seemed like he was about to burst in yelling at any moment. "What do you mean, coming back? You remarried Mia, didn't you?" When I mentioned Mia's name, John was surprised and exclaimed, "How do you know that?" "Did you think I didn't know? You cheated, right? That's why I demanded alimony." Yes, that's right, but alimony and child support, there's no way I can pay that." "Why do I have to pay alimony in the first place?" You, who never did the housework, should be the one to pay alimony. I was dumbfounded to hear John's argument. I had demanded alimony and child support from John through a lawyer, but it hadn't been paid yet. I knew that John didn't have a lump sum of money, but he should borrow and pay. Yet John was saying something incomprehensible like, I should be the one to pay alimony. I noticed your affair and gathered evidence. Did you see it from the lawyer? It seems that John had already seen the evidence gathered by the detective agency. That would make things easier, but calling me specifically is beyond common sense. I wanted to divorce you even before I found out about the affair. After all, you never helped with housework or child rearing, and you just complained all the time. I'm not your housekeeper, you know? But it's good you were married, right? Now, you have someone to take care of you again. That's the thing. Mia can't do housework. I didn't know. Before marriage, she said, leave everything to me. But once we got married, her cooking is terrible and she doesn't clean. I would have been better off with you. Marry me again. After all, you don't have any money, right? Emma liked me too, didn't she? I couldn't suppress my anger at John for choosing the word better. What? What are you talking about? You divorced me and remarried your affair partner, right? It's not my responsibility. Besides, sorry to say, Emma doesn't like you, and I have money. Don't lie to me. It's obvious. There's no way you have money. You were a housewife. You can't live without me. I had no intentions of telling John about the fortune I inherited from my parents, but when I was confronted this intensely, I had no choice but to reveal it. My parents are the CEOs. Recently, I inherited their assets. It's around $13 million in total, so I can live without working for the rest of my life. I could almost visualize John gaping on the other end of the phone as he heard about this massive fortune from my mouth. You're lying, right? There's no way you have such a huge amount of money. It's true. If you want, I can have my parents tell you. With that, John finally seemed to believe my words and fell silent. Then he suddenly yelled, If it's true, why didn't you tell me? Well, I wanted to tell you, but I knew about your affair and I was thinking of divorcing you, so I thought it didn't matter. At that point, I hadn't yet inherited the assets and there was no issue of property distribution. Damn! John bit his lip in frustration. He probably never imagined that I had such assets. He must be regretting that he should have never divorced me. But I didn't want to suffer his terrible behavior anymore. Can I hang up now? Please pay the alimony properly, reflect on your actions, and never call me again. Goodbye. With that, I hung up the phone. I immediately blocked John's number. No more calls would come. Mom, who were you talking to? Emma came into the room, asked curiously. A friend of mine, but Emma, do you want to go to the amusement park this weekend? Yes! Emma smiled happily. I realized once again that as long as Emma is smiling, that was enough for me. A few days later, I heard that John had broken up with his new wife, Mia. The cause was a dispute over Mia not doing housework, and it seems that Mia dumped John. John, who had been divorced twice in a short period of time, would probably have a hard time getting married again. At any rate, it would be best if there were no more victims, so I hope John remains single for a while. Due to his divorce from Mia, he lost his motivation for work and quit his job at the restaurant. He will probably find another job, but I think it will take a while for him to get back on track. I do feel sorry for him as his life has fallen apart, but it's all his own fault. I blocked his calls so he couldn't beg me for money, and and I made sure not to go to places where I had been with John. In my life, John literally disappeared. After a while, John paid the alimony. With that, John ended up in debt. I don't know how he'll make a living, but I hope he learns his lesson. I'm still living leisurely at my parents' house. My parents told me that it's okay for us to stay as long as we like. After my fracture healed completely, I started part-time work at a local flower shop. Although I can live without working, it suits me better to work outside rather than staying at home all the time. I work diligently on weekdays and go out to play with Emma and my parents on holidays. I felt more joy in life than before. I want to continue living happily with the people I love. I savored the happiness of this moment while looking at Emma's smile. Go home, you broke old hag. Who do you think you are, coming to the trip for free? I was astonished at my family as usual. I'll show you hell. I decided to punish them. While I was away from my family enjoying some peace and quiet, my younger brother called me. Hey, what did you do, sis? My name is Karen, a 30-year-old office worker. I have a boyfriend of 3 years. His name is Adam, a wonderful man who is very gentle, caring, and considerate. We met when we were in university. He was a senior when I was a junior. Whenever I had some work or personal troubles, I often confided in him. Every time, he would listen empathetically to my stories and gave me sound advice. After graduation, we would meet up regularly, and one day he confessed his feelings to me, and we started dating. Since then, we have been getting along well, and I was thinking one day we will marry. One day, he finally proposed to me. Karen, I want to be with you forever, so will you marry me? Yes! And so we decided to get married. We soon went to announce our marriage to our respective families. I'm pleased to see you. I'm Karen. Oh, I'm glad we finally got to meet. Adam has talked about you a lot. He was right. You're such a lovely girl. Stop. I'm blushing. Oh, please don't be. Come in. Thank you. Adam had lost his father a few years ago, and now only his mother was left in his family home. I was very anxious about whether I would get along with my mother-in-law and whether she would like me, but I was relieved to find that she was a very kind and wonderful person. We had a delightful conversation over some tea and sweets. Karen is such a good girl. I'm so happy she'll be Adam's wife. His mother praised me very much. I'd never received so much compliments like this before, so I didn't know how to react and felt a little puzzled. We're looking forward to your wedding. See you, Mom. Thank you for today. The wedding greetings went well with a friendly atmosphere, and I felt relieved. But next, I had to introduce him to my family. Just thinking about it made me feel blue. You see, I don't really like my family that much. The reason is how my parents treated me since I was a child. Both of my parents were good at sports, with my mother doing track and field and my father playing soccer. Because they were both at a level to get recommended to university, they had high expectations for their own children to exceed in sports as well. But I didn't have the athletic ability that my parents hoped for. They tried to put me in various sports lessons, hoping I would exceed in something. I remember they made me play basketball, swimming, table tennis, and even figure skating. However, I had fundamentally poor athletic ability. Well, I might be considered average from a general perspective, but it was far from the level needed to pursue excellence. As a result, my parents were frustrated. In the midst of this, my younger brother Kenny was born. My parents expected that there were many sports in which boys could exceed, so they tried to make my brother participate in sports as well. Then, my brother showed talent in soccer. When the coach of the local youth soccer team said, "This kid is a genius," my parents were over the moon and began devoting all their love to my brother. Kenny is truly a genius. He takes after us, after all. Their words implied that I was an ordinary person and that they did not want to admit that I was their child. No matter what my parents did, they favored my brother and didn't care about me. I went to middle school and then to high school, but they still did not care. Even when I worked hard and achieved decent grades, my parents denied my efforts, saying, "Even if you're good at studying, it's meaningless." I told my parents that I wanted to attend college, but they said, "We can't pay for your tuition. You have to go on your own." I went to college on a scholarship. On the other hand, my brother continued to shine in soccer and got accepted into a high school on a soccer recommendation. My parents were ecstatic about this too. "With this, he'll undoubtedly go pro. I'll do anything for Kenny." Growing up loved and adored that way by my parents, my brother inevitably looked down on me. "Sis, you really are an incompetent, attract poverty to yourself type of person, aren't you? Even mom and dad don't like you. If it weren't for you, mom and dad would be more invested in me. You're a real pain in the ass." My brother used to bully me like that, and my parents never stopped him, but instead cursed with him together. "She's such a trouble. A money pit is a person like you, right?" I had lost all confidence in myself after being told such things by my own family. I did my best in my studies and went on to a reasonably good university and got a job at a big company with a high salary, but my low self-esteem was still low as ever. And me going to college and being hired at a big company would be instantly forgotten because of Kenny's success. Kenny was selected to go on to college as well as high school with a soccer recommendation. My parents were even more proud of my brother who, like them, had started a life career in sports. I was already working by then, but it was hard for me to save money every day because I had to pay back my scholarship. My brother stayed at home with his parents and received lots of love from them while attending college and continuing to play soccer. However, the road to becoming a professional soccer player was not easy. In the end, when it came time for him to graduate from college, he was still unable to become a professional soccer player and had to find a job. Our parents were still very proud of him, and he continued to live at home with his parents, getting along well with them. My parents always made me participate in their New Year's gatherings, but they explained to my relatives that I was a bad daughter and my brother was proud son. "But Karen is a good girl too. Working at a big company, you should be so proud." Even though my relatives would say that to me, my parents would just deny and say, No, Kenny is many times more amazing than her." I always feel disappointed when I see my parents act that way. My family treats me so poorly. I stopped attending New Year's gatherings, so I was very hesitant to let Adam, my dear fiancé, meet them. I have already told Adam about my parents and my brother and how poor their attitude is. However, he wanted to make a proper wedding greeting, so I decided to go back to my parents' house for the first time in several years. I called my mother to tell her about the marriage. What? No, long time no see, or how are you? Just what I expected. Daughter calling her for the first time in a few years, and this is the reaction I get. Can you hurry up and tell me what you want? I'm getting married. So? He wants to say hi to you, so I was wondering if you'd meet with him. Why do I have to go through all that trouble? If you want to get married, you can go ahead and do that on your own. No. I was disappointed in my mother's cold attitude. But then I heard a voice over the phone that sounded like my brother's. Mom, who are you talking to? It's Karen. She said she's getting married and wanted to bring her fiancé to say hello. Wow, that sounds interesting. I want to see how dull the other guy is, so let's meet him. Really? Well, if you say so. She picked up the phone and said, hello? You can come and say hello. I had mixed feelings because I could hear their conversation, but he still wanted to say hello, so I decided to go to my parents' house on my next day off. Be prepared for some really bad behavior. I look forward to it. If the conversation over the phone is true like you said, wow. It's not funny. I've had some really bad experiences. Sorry, but if we're going to get married, I'm going to have to meet your family. Let's just talk quickly and go home. Okay. So we drove to my parents' house. When we arrived at my parents' house, I pressed the intercom, but no one greeted me. When I arrived at the living room, I found my family all sitting together on the sofa. I was surprised to see a young woman whom I did not know at the time. I thought I had to say hello first. I'm home, long time no see. This is my fiancé, Adam. Nice to meet you. When I introduced him, everyone in the family looked at him. I thought he'd be more plain and dull. He's surprisingly decent. Kenny was rude right from the start. Adam was laughing. What about that woman next to you, Kenny? Is she your girlfriend? I called in advance about bringing my fiancé and he brought an irrelevant woman. I was astonished by how much he has no common sense. That's my wife, Mira. She's been living here with me since we got married. What? Your wife? My eyes were widened with surprise. Wait a minute, Kenny, you were married? Yeah, last year. Wait, I didn't know that. I raised my voice involuntarily, and our mother made a disgusted face. You're a picky kid, aren't you? You don't have anything to do with Kenny's marriage, so there's no need to tell you. No. My brother had gotten married and nobody told me. I was shocked and froze on the spot. Then my father spoke to Adam. Like I care, but what do you do for a living? I know it's not much of a job since you're marrying Karen, but I'll ask you anyway. My father's words brought me back to myself. I would not allow my precious fiancé to be made fun of. I clenched my fists with anger, but Adam noticed and lightly restrained me with his hand. Apologies, how rude of me to not introduce myself. This is who I am. Adam then handed his business card to my father. My father looked at the card with a disgusted look. Then his eyes widened. Lawyer? My father shouted, and my whole family and Kenny's new wife was all in shock. This is amazing! Mother, get him some tea, quickly! Yes. Wow, a real lawyer? Cool! My family members blatantly changed their attitudes. Adam also rolled his eyes in dismay. Man, I never would have imagined that Karen will be marrying a lawyer. Why didn't you say so? Is the salary really good? Please buy me a fancy bag or something for my birthday. I was appalled at my family, who were not shy about making such comments. As for my brother's wife, she's too impudent. How can she say such a thing to my fiancé when you've never even met me before? Adam was laughing as he answered, We're going to be a family now, so let's take care of each other. My mother said so, but I had a very bad feeling. Then my parents and my brother and his wife actively participated in the meeting of both families. They talked a lot in front of me, so Adam's mother was indeed a bit taken aback. I apologized to his mother after the meeting, but his mother seemed to have heard from Adam and said with a smile, Don't worry about it. I was relieved for the time being. Adam's mother is really a good person. About 2 months later, Adam and I had our wedding ceremony. All of my family, who had treated me so poorly and never wanted to be involved with me, came to the wedding. After the wedding, they began to contact me more frequently. Would you and your husband like to have dinner with us sometime? I know a great restaurant. That's how my mother will start the call. She was probably trying to get me because my husband is a lawyer and makes a lot of money. But I would not fall for her scheme. I'm a little busy, so I don't think I'll be able to make it. I'll let you know when I can make it again. Okay, I'll wait for your call. Anytime is okay for us. I was so disgusted with my mother, who said this in a bouncy voice. Apparently, she doesn't care about me and just wanted to take advantage of the fact that I married a rich man. After a few months of not contacting her, she called me again and said, Hey Karen, when are you going to get together with us? My mother says that way in a wheedling tone of voice. I'm sorry, I've been a little busy. When I was about to hang up the phone, We're talking about celebrating my 60th birthday, she said. We've been paying for your high school education and your father and I have been supporting you, haven't we? I think it's only right that you return the favor a little. Reading between the lines, I could sense her trying to say, pay us back. But what my mother said was true. I went to college on my own, but my parents had supported me through my life up to high school. It might be necessary for me to return the favor to my mother when she turns 60 years old. Alright, we'll join in the celebration. Really? Then we are planning a family vacation, so let's go together. A family vacation? I didn't like the idea, but I thought it would give my husband and I some time alone together. I told my husband and he agreed, so we decided to join the family trip. When I told my mother about it, she was overjoyed. Well, I'll send you the links of the hotels we want to stay at, the plans, other things on the internet. What? Then she sent me many links. I had no choice but to look at the contents. I found many websites of luxury hotels and restaurants. I wondered how extravagant she was planning this trip. I was appalled by the family's endless attempts to collect money from us, but I thought this would be the first and the last time, so I proceeded to make the reservations. My mother was overjoyed when I called her to tell her that the reservation was complete. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you. The day of the family trip to celebrate her 60th birthday arrived. This time we planned a trip to Kyoto. We boarded the plane and headed for Kyoto. My parents and my brother and his wife looked very happy. When we arrived at the airport, my husband and I said we were going our separate ways and parted ways with them. They seemed to be trying to get us to buy souvenirs and stuff and wanted us to go around with them, but I managed to dodge their attempts and we went on our own. We went our separate ways and met in front of a fancy restaurant where we had made reservations for dinner. Time flew by as my husband and I enjoyed sightseeing. Then we went to the fancy restaurant. My parents and my brother and his wife were already in front of the restaurant. "You're late." "No, but we still have 10 minutes until our reservation." When I replied, my mother and brother suddenly changed their attitude. "I'm not talking to you." "What?" "Oh yeah, we're only here for you, Adam. Thank you for paying for our dinner at such a fancy restaurant and our stay at a fancy hotel." "What?" My husband rolled his eyes, not understanding what she was talking about. Then my brothers turned to me this time. "You're done here, sis." "What?" "I'm saying Adam's parasite has no right to have a good time." "Hey, what are you talking about?" While still being confused, they started to shout out, "Go home, you broke old hag! Who the hell do you think you are coming along on a free trip?" As usual, I was astonished at my family. "I see, so that's how it is." So they were going to exclude me from the beginning. I'll show you guys how. I decided to punish them. I whispered to Adam, "Okay, I'll leave here." My parents and my brother and his wife looked triumphant. They then took my husband into the restaurant. Then I quickly made some arrangements. Luckily, a good hotel had a cancellation and had a vacancy. So I made a reservation there and I checked right in. I checked in and took a relaxing bath in a hotel with a great view. I was relaxing a bit away from my family when I received a phone call from my brother. "Hey, what did you do, sis?" "What's wrong?" "I'll tell you what's wrong. Adam disappeared." "I don't know anything about that." "Don't be silly. You said something when you were whispering in his ear, didn't you?" He's usually an idiot, but he's got a good instinct for that kind of thing. "Yeah, well, it's no big deal." I told him I'll be staying at a different hotel, so to come over anytime. "Don't be silly. Adam, he said he got a phone call before the food came, got up from his seat, and didn't come back. He didn't come back until the end, and we had to pay for that expensive food and drink." "Oh, really? But it's your mother's 60th birthday celebration. Isn't it normal for you to pay?" "Shut up! I'm going to charge you for it later." With that, my brother hung up the phone. Soon after that, my husband came to the hotel where I was staying. He was smiling at me. How is he? Was he mad? He was very furious. You were originally going to take care of the flight, the restaurant, and the hotel bill, but then they misunderstood and said something like that to you. Those people are beyond saving. My husband was indeed stunned. We got ourselves together and went to the hotel's high-class restaurant and enjoyed our meal. We went back to our room, relaxed, and welcomed the next morning. We woke up early and enjoyed sightseeing. We didn't want our flight time to conflict with our parents, so we changed our flight time and left early. While my husband and I were waiting for our flight to board, my phone was blowing up with numerous calls from my mother. Hello, what's wrong? I thought you didn't want me. What the hell is going on? Why aren't you paying for our accommodations? Because that's how I made the reservation. Don't be silly. I can't pay $700 per person. You had a good time. You should pay for it. Unless, of course, you want to get caught. That's enough. You are a parasite. And you're smug. You're the parasite? I was going to pay for this family vacation with all the money I've saved as a way of repaying you for all the support you've given me. It's your fault that you misunderstood and turned me away. What? Did you plan to pay for your own accommodation and food and drink? That's what I'm saying. Oh no, there's no way you can afford that much money. Don't underestimate me. I work for the head office of a big company and I'm a section chief there. I have quite a bit of money saved up and my monthly salary is a lot higher than my father's. What? My mother was absolutely stunned when she learned the truth. But it doesn't matter anymore. I decided to cut them off completely. I've got a plane ticket, so I'll see you later. Oh, hey! I hung up the phone and blocked all calls from my family's numbers. Fortunately, I didn't tell them where I worked or where we lived, so my family weren't able to reach me. But the idiot family stormed into the lawyer's office listed on the business card my husband gave them. They demanded to see my husband and interrupted his business. My brother even broke some equipment there, which was reported to the police. They were arrested. They had to pay for the damage and fines after spending so much money on a family vacation. And because of the arrest, both my father and brother were fired from their jobs. Now, they're all working part-time or as freelancers, living unwealthy lives and bickering constantly with each other. They really are idiots and they deserve it. Alternatively, my husband and I are still living happily and I got pregnant. I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl and rejoiced over the birth of my daughter with my husband and mother-in-law. I will continue to cherish this family, my husband, my mother-in-law, and my daughter, and will live and enjoy happily ever after.
It seems my husband has become possessed by a demon.
This house will go to Susan. If you resist, it's a divorce.
He's giving the house that I bought in my name to our eldest son's wife. Old hag, get out soon. A daughter-in-law who has won over my husband.
It's going to be in my name, ha ha ha. I can pay for a loan of $1,500.
My eldest son is on their side too. Well, I don't have any attachment to this filthy house anymore. Then I'll leave. I'm going to send you three to hell from now on. Prepare yourselves. I am Kate, 60 years old. I work for a major company and hold what's called an executive position. I live with my husband Tom, who is 2 years younger than me. We renovated our house last year for our future. Our house was built by my father and is quite old. Because of that, it was quite worn out, and we wanted to make it comfortable for our old age. But considering our age, the loan is a bit high at $1,500. Nevertheless, it's not an amount we can't afford, and since I'm an executive at a major company, I was told that the loan would be approved. By the way, Tom is the manager of a restaurant at a small to medium-sized company, but because his income is less than mine, it seems that it's easier for my loan to be approved.
It's tough to keep paying with my income. It was originally your father's house, and now it's under your name. Could you please pay the full amount? In return, I will give you more living expenses than before.
So we had a discussion and decided to renovate. Our home, now beautiful and comfortable, was unrecognizable. It made me truly happy to know that we could continue living in the house where we had spent our childhood, transformed by renovation. But I never thought the day would come when I would have to leave the house. One day, my cell phone vibrated.
I'm getting married.
That's what my eldest son Mike said on the phone. Mike, 31 years old, is a section chief at a major company. He has always been serious, devoting himself to study and club activities. He is very enthusiastic about his work, even after becoming a working adult. I had never heard of him having a girlfriend. I was very interested in the woman he was considering marrying. I wonder what kind of woman she is. It must be a fantastic woman since Mike fell in love with her. But I can't help but worry if she is taking advantage of Mike's lack of romantic experience for some ulterior motive. As a mother, I felt an equal amount of excitement and anxiety about the woman who would be coming into our son's life. And then the day of our first meeting arrived. A ladylike woman with brown hair and wearing a white chiffon dress entered our home. "Hello, my name is Susan." Her manners were impeccable, and she had an aura of purity about her. Her first impression was quite good. "Nice to meet you, Father and Mother." She showed her beautiful white teeth as she smiled at us. We can entrust Mike to her. Seeing her, both my husband, Tom, and I thought she was a good match for our son.
She seems like a good girl,
when Tom whispered. "I'm very happy to hear you say that, Father. Let's get along well from now on." As she said this, she held Tom's hand and looked into his eyes. "What? What is she doing?" I was taken aback by her overly familiar behavior. Mike seemed surprised as well, but Tom just stood there, surprised, but not displeased. I wasn't exactly jealous, but it wasn't a pleasant feeling. What are you doing?" I felt that such behavior was inappropriate, so I asked Susan. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to overstep my boundaries on our first meeting. I'm really sorry." She quickly let go of Tom's hand and apologized. "People often tell me that my sense of personal distance is strange. I don't mean any harm, but I often overstep boundaries. I'm really sorry." It seemed like she wasn't a bad person. Although I was shocked by her behavior because it contradicted my first impression of her, it was clear that Mike was smitten with her. In the previous action,
That's true. Susan often doesn't understand personal boundaries, but I think that's one of her good points. She's the one who helped me overcome my shyness with women, and because of that, we're now able to consider getting married.
Our introverted son had changed so much because of Susan's influence. Please, look after Mike. Despite her quirk, it was clear she was a good person. I accepted their marriage. Things moved quickly, and they were officially registered as a married couple a few weeks later. I prayed for their happiness from the bottom of my heart. Half a year after their marriage, something unexpected happened. "I'm home." "Huh?" When I returned from work, I saw a pair of women's shoes at the entrance. In the living room, I found Susan. "Oh, mother-in-law, welcome back." There were empty cans and bottles of alcohol on the table. It seemed they had been drinking. What's this?" I was puzzled as to why they would have a drinking party without Mike. Curious, I asked,
Well, when I was about to return from work, I ran into Susan. She said she wanted to get to know me better, so we decided to have a drink. But since it's just before payday, I figured we'd be better off drinking at home.
Why would they have a drinking party at home? If you're going to drink together, it would be better if Mike was there too. It might be a bit of an inconvenience for the newlyweds, but you could have had drinks at Mike and Susan's place instead, I say, tilting my head in confusion. Well, we could have done it at our place, but isn't this house super clean and nice? Plus, our place is a mess right now. Susan, whose speech was usually composed, is slurring her words. It's a surprise, considering she has been drinking. But why are they drinking together? Why didn't you invite Mike? It seems odd for a daughter-in-law to come to her in-law's house to drink, especially without her husband, who is newlywed. I have been looking for Mike ever since I saw them. He is working overtime because it's the busiest time of the year for him. I've been so lonely. Susan starts to cry as she says this.
It's okay, Susan. It's not your fault. The one who's wrong is Mike for leaving you alone even though you just got married.
Tom starts patting her on the head as he says this. Wah, Daddy. What is this situation? It's creepy. Hey, Tom, Susan is Mike's wife, right? It's not nice of you to do this to her. It's not fair to Mike. I reprimand Tom for his inappropriate behavior. And then, don't scold Daddy. Susan defends Tom. What? I was so surprised by the absurdity that I blurted it out. I had a lot to say, but I was too tired from work to deal with it all. I'm going to take a bath. Please clean up later. I sighed and fled to the bathroom, then called Mike to explain the situation. He agreed to interrupt his work and come to pick her up immediately. To me, Susan seems like a peculiar girl, but Mike must truly love her if he's going out of his way to pick her up despite being busy. I suspect that their married life may prove to be a bit of a challenge. I might turn into a disagreeable mother-in-law, but I've decided to offer some advice about their future married life once Mike arrives. Time flew by while I was pondering all this in the bath. When I headed to the living room, feeling a bit lightheaded from the heat, I found Mike had come to pick up Susan, but for some reason he was drinking even though he had driven here. Mike, you did drive here, right? Have you been drinking? When I asked, he answered in a drunken and cheerful manner.
Susan wanted me to drink, so I just went with it. So I've decided to stay over tonight.
I'm happy that my son will be staying over, but his bride-to-be, who has left a bad impression on me, is staying over too, and quite suddenly at that. Huh. To be honest, I was perplexed, but Mike has already had alcohol. I can drive you guys. I didn't want the bride to stay. Even though I was tired, I offered to drive them home, but...
No way. That wouldn't be right. You must be tired too. Why don't you join us for a drink instead?
Mike with his carefree smile. I didn't say anything further. Huh? At that moment, I felt something was off. Suddenly, Susan smirked. It was as if she was taking pleasure in my confusion. It must be my imagination, right? I tried to convince myself it was a misunderstanding, but unbeknownst to me, her tremendously dangerous plan had already begun. The next day, Susan repeatedly apologized for her blunder. I'm really sorry, she said as she left. I felt completely drained, like a storm had just passed. Then, when I returned home that day, Susan was there again, but there was no sign of Mike. I felt despair, but the situation seemed different from yesterday. I'm sorry for intruding again, but I really wanted to apologize, she said, offering me some sweets.
I also went overboard. My bad.
Tom seemed remorseful too. Although it upset me, it seemed like they were genuinely sorry. I decided to let it slide this time. I forgave them. Thank you. Susan seemed quite embarrassed about what happened and stopped visiting. To be honest, I didn't want to get involved much either, so I was grateful for this development. Then one day, Tom came over with a serious look on his face.
There's something I want to talk about,
he said. As I was wondering what it could be, Mike and Susan showed up at our house. It's been a while, I greeted them, but for some reason they ignored me. Did they not hear me? Just as I was beginning to wonder, Tom suddenly shouted out loud.
I'm giving this house to Susan. If you oppose, we'll get a divorce.
What? What kind of nonsense is he spouting? Giving the house to Susan? I don't understand. As I stood there stunned, Susan said, Mother-in-law, please leave. What? What does this mean? I am confused. Wait a minute. What do you mean you're giving the house to Susan? I asked Tom, and he answered. You've been harassing Susan all this time, haven't you? How dare you? Harassing her? That's a baseless accusation. That's absolutely not true. But he wouldn't listen to my protests.
Shut up, she told me. That's why she was crying and couldn't come over.
Tom kept yelling and Susan was crying. Why is this happening? The Mike seemed to join in as if to help them.
I can't believe you would do something like that, Mom. That's really low.
The more I denied it, the angrier the two men became, and Susan just cried more.
That's why I'm divorcing you. Get out right now. I'm going to keep living here with the two of them.
Why do I have to give my house to Susan? When I asked.
Because Susan is deeply hurt. I suppose we could have asked for division of property, but I thought of a better idea. I'm going to take this precious house of yours and give it to her. That should give you an appropriate sense of loss.
Even though I'm not bullying, why do I have to be the one causing damage? It's unreasonable to think that Susan, who quit her job when we got married, can afford to pay a loan of $1,500. When I said that,
Don't worry, we'll put it in Mike's name. If it's his salary and place of work, we can change the name right away.
Even so, it should be difficult to change the name if a loan is involved. If changing a loan was that easy, anyone could buy a house. I don't think the bank will approve. When I said that, Tom responded,
You work for a big company and so does Mike, so it should be fine. Besides, I have a friend who works at the bank where you have your loan. I'm sure it'll be fine if we consult him.
Where does that confidence come from, I wonder?
That's right. A loan of $1,500 is nothing.
Mike, full of confidence after Tom's words. It seems like it's becoming more likely that I will have to give up my house. I've said it many times, but I'm not bullying, so I absolutely won't give up the house. When I argue, the two get angry again. Oh, this is so tiresome. While I was getting fed up, Susan, who had been crying all this while, spoke up. Mother-in-law, for the sake of our child, please. Susan pleading as she strokes her stomach. Could it be?
Mom, Susan is pregnant. If she continues to be mentally unstable, she might have a miscarriage. So, please give in.
I am being informed of the pregnancy here. Certainly, stress is a great enemy during pregnancy, but to be forced to give up my house over a baseless accusation? I am left feeling frustrated. Let me be alone for a while. I left the room and went to the bedroom. Bullying? What is that? Could it be that I've done something terrible to Susan without realizing it? As I was worrying and lying down on the bed, what's this? There was brown hair on the bed. Tom's and my hair color is black. It's impossible for brown hair to be there. Is this a sign of infidelity? After the quarrel earlier, another terrible truth has come to light. My head is about to explode. I don't know what's what anymore. I fell asleep crying, and when I woke up it was night. As I tried to enter the living room, I heard voices. It seems that Mike and Susan haven't returned yet. I wanted to drink too.
Susan, you can't because you're pregnant.
Tom and Susan are having a great time. There's no room for me to join them. I'm depressed because of Susan's mysterious accusations. As I couldn't enter the living room, suddenly I heard a strange sound.
Susan, I love you.
Oh, Tom, you...
Mike and my mother-in-law will find out, won't they? What? What are Tom and Susan doing? What on earth is going on?
Don't worry, Mike's out cold from all the drinking. Plus, Kate has been in her room the whole time. She must be asleep by now.
Is she sulking in her sleep? Hilarious! That brown hair probably belongs to Susan. It's disgusting. What were they doing in the bed I was sleeping in just a while ago? They must be planning to have fun with Susan while hiding from Mike after they kicked me out. My house being used for an affair. Fine, I'll give up this disgusting house. But remember this. The next morning, I pretend to have slept in the bedroom and put on a nonchalant face in front of the three of them, even though I don't want to sleep in that bed anymore and couldn't get any sleep, because I was so shocked.
Are you finally going to give us the house?
When I said I had decided to hand over the house, everyone smiled.
All right, let's go change the name on the property deed then. I'm sure I'll pass the loan review right away.
Mike, excited. He probably doesn't know anything. It made me sad, but I won't tell the truth to a son who doesn't listen to his mother and is being controlled by his wife. Not yet. Then the hectic days of divorce proceedings and name changes followed. It was very tough, but somehow the name change was completed.
From today, it's no longer your house,
Tom sneered. Get out already, old lady. Susan whispered in my ear. I was pretty annoyed. I'm leaving without being told. I'm letting go of the house I've lived in since birth. It was sad, but it's also the place where the affair happened. I have no regrets. And I'm going to stir up the weird relationship between these three. Just watch. 1 month after I left, finally I'm ready. I went to my former house. When I rang the doorbell,
what does a stranger want?
Tom, raging after such a long time. I have something to discuss. Can you let me in? I say it strongly.
Why do I have to let you into my house?
Tom refuses to let me in. I have something very important to talk about. It's important for Susan too.
Something important for Susan?
He let me into the house easily when I mentioned her name. To be honest, I didn't want to say her name because it made me feel sick. But I knew he was weak for her, so I mentioned her name.
A stranger's here.
A stranger? Well, we did divorce, so maybe we are strangers, but he didn't have to say it like that. I was irritated by Tom's response.
What do you want now?
The three of them are extremely wary. They need to see this.
Huh?
I laid out the photos.
What is this?
The photos showed Tom and her on a date. In fact, I had hired a detective to follow them after our divorce. As a result, I got pictures of them on a date.
Wait a moment. Huh? What?
Mike is flustered. Then,
what is the meaning of this photo? We are just a close daughter-in-law and father-in-law. Nothing more and nothing less.
Yes. What do you want to accomplish by taking such an inexplicable photo? Then what is this? I pull out my smartphone and play an audio recording.
Because I really love you, Susan.
Hey, if you speak so loudly, Mike and my mother-in-law will wake up. It's the voices of Tom and her, along with some suspicious noises.
What?
On the day I found out about their relationship, I had recorded their exchange.
No, it's a misunderstanding.
Tom desperately tries to explain.
Misunderstanding? This is clearly over the line.
As expected, Mike is furious. She is hanging her head low. I pour more oil onto the fire. By the way, whose child is it in your belly? Tom's face instantly turns pale.
You don't mean with my dad?
No, my father-in-law was on birth control. Oh, she dug her own grave.
You admitted it, didn't you? You just admitted it, didn't you?
The three of them yell, and Tom and Mike grapple with each other. Ouch! It seems that her belly tightened from the argument, and the fight is interrupted. Then I seize the opportunity and say, I've always said it, haven't I, that I wasn't bullying Susan. Maybe you were lying just to get rid of me, so that you could convince Mike? Mike is taken aback.
You're kidding. What the hell? You guys and... I can't believe I didn't trust my mother.
Mike seems to be blaming himself for listening to the villainous woman and not believing his own mother.
Since I found out, just tell me everything.
Mike yells at the two of them. They were hesitant to talk, but
there's so much evidence. Do you want to go to court?
The word court gets them talking. Apparently at first she loved Mike, but when they came to our house for the wedding greeting, she saw our newly renovated and beautiful house and wanted it.
My home is quite dilapidated, and I was jealous of this beautiful house, and I thought the inside was also quite nice,
she explains while crying. Wanting the house, she decided to get close to Tom on the day of the wedding greeting. She deliberately ambushed Tom on his way home from work and drank alcohol at home without inviting Mike. She seems to have nurtured her love with Tom for several months and planned to kick me out. If that's the case, you should have proposed living together from the start. When I said that, she paused and then answered.
I don't have a good image of a mother-in-law. My mother and grandmother at home are always fighting. My grandmother was bullying my mother, so I didn't want to live with a mother-in-law. To live comfortably in a beautiful house, I thought I had no choice but to get you to leave.
Indeed, with such an image, she wouldn't want to live with a mother-in-law. But to be in love with her actual father-in-law? What did Mike think about this?
I knew I was being used, but when she came to greet us, shook my hand, and smiled at me, I was already...
Even though he knew he was being used, Tom, who had fallen in love, seems to have done this to discard me and keep her by his side.
You guys are the worst.
When Mike said that, the two of them began to plead and cried. After that, Mike, of course, divorced. When they checked the DNA of the child, who was born just in case, it turned out to be Tom's child.
I won't pay child support.
Saying that, Mike demanded division of property from the two. Of course, so did I.
I never thought I'd have to demand division of property from my own father.
I patted on Mike's head as he sighed heavily. We were driven crazy by a foolish woman. But the woman who will ruin her life more than us will probably regret it forever from now on. And my hunch was right. 2 years have passed since then. She remarried Tom and decided to never divorce but to stay together forever. She said it was for the sake of their child, and she put the child she gave birth to in daycare so she could work.
So today, your papa came to pick you up.
Apparently she's been looked down on by the other moms at the daycare. The children seem to be getting along well, but she's full of sadness because she can't make any mom friends. Moreover, when she explained to her own parents about the divorce and remarriage with Tom, they were furious, and all the anger was directed at Tom. They are now estranged. It's all her own doing. By the way, Mike is living alone in that house.
I wanted to sell it, but that would be too cruel to my mother. After all, this is the house where my mother lived since she was born, isn't it? I can't sell a house full of memories like that.
I told him it was creepy and he could sell it, but he said he was so full of guilt that he couldn't. And perhaps because I kept saying that house is creepy, he hired a house cleaning service and threw away all of Tom and her belongings. Mike, who did all that for me, said,
Even though it was because of that woman, I did something horrible to my mother. You probably won't forgive me, but please meet me on a whim, come to my house, and let me honor you.
And he gave me a gift of vacation tickets. He is truly remorseful. I can't forgive him yet, but I think I'll try to work hard to return to our original parent-child relationship.